So there my daughter was, a 15-year-old Pokomo girl in Ziwani, Nairobi. She had visions of living well, giving birth to a half-white child, and eventually finding a man who would marry her. She would show them off back in Rabai. That is what she imagined. Alas, it was not to be.
Kile sikujua ni kwamba Paul Manubai Sejani had understood from his talk with Brother Bright, 80, I was a girl who could not keep her legs together. Almost as soon as I got there, I became Manubai's and his relative's sexual plaything. One night, after Manubai's son, kwa jina Viraj, played games with me, nikaamshwa by a sharp pain in my belly. The housekeeper, an old lady, kwa jina Mariana, kanipa mitishamba, yani herbs. She stayed with me throughout the night as I wept and bled. I lost my baby. Kistaajabu ya Musa. Utaona ya Firauni. The next morning, isn't that Manubai's wife shouting at me?
The trouble with you is that you are a whore. You are wanting to curse my family. If you're thinking I will give you that satisfaction, you're very wrong. Very wrong.
And Manubai's wife threw me out of the door. I sat down on a street at Kariakor, not far from the campus of the Kariakops that gave the area the name. Alafu ndo huyo mimi nikapiga nduru. I screamed until only tears remained.
A hen needs a rooster, even when the hen doesn't know it. That was a popular saying back then. In the Kenya of 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s, it was frowned upon for women to live in Nairobi or anywhere else really by themselves. They were considered immoral women and attracted the wrath of the police and other men of prey who forcefully entered their houses and beds. The rape of single women became the norm. To adapt to these strange and adverse conditions, women had to secure themselves, and so they found a man who had left their wives in reserves, and they lived together as husband and wife.
After Manubai's wife threw me out of her house like a dog, my friend Wanja took me in. She lived in Kariakor. I lived with Wanja and her husband, sleeping on the floor until I recuperated from the pain in my heart and in my womb. Then it was time for me to find a job and a husband of my own. husband I found in a gentle, very gentle and kind man kwa jina Gashaga. Gashaga was a driver for Mrs. Tate's, tajiri mwenye Stanley Hotel. Simwamjua? Tukahama to a one-roomed house in Bahati, mji wa Wakikuyu. And because of my light complexion and because it was also easy for the Kikuyus to pronounce, wakanibatiza jina Kero. Kero Bahati. Kweli nikabahatika. Wanja got me a job where she worked. It was a bread company. Yani bakery. Our job was to... Our job was to knead the raw dough. We called it marching. We marched in big cauldrons. Yani sufuria kubwa. There were no machines in those days. But first, when we arrived at work, we washed our feet. We lifted our skirts all the way up. All the way up to the waist for the mbeberu to examine. We rarely wore shoes or underwear in those days. Acha tuongee ukweli, eh? Na tuseme ukweli, wewe hapo. In our cultures, hizo siku za zamani, was it really normal to wear underwear? Was it? Kusema ukweli, it wasn't normal. It wasn't. Huh? Perhaps it will not surprise you to hear that the examination often involved more than just examining the legs. Eh? You see, if you wanted to retain your job, you had to allow the mbeberi to have his way with you whenever he wanted. Eh? We called it assisting the boss. And didn't I assist the boss whenever he needed the assistance? And the boss needed a lot of assistance. And the boss needed a lot of assistance. The boss really needed a lot of assistance.
In 1948, the police knocked down my daughter's door. They arrested Gishaga on suspicion of being part of the Mau Mau town forces. On hearing this, my daughter's boss at the bakery fired her. What would you do if you're a woman, alone, far from home, in a country fighting colonial oppressors? What would you do if you're a woman, alone, broke and jobless, in a city filled with self-appointed local predators?
Nilikuwa mwenye msiba usio na kifani. I was really in a desperate state when I met Ma Sofia. Ma Sofia was a prostitute. She owned one of the local earliest brothels in Ziwani. What could I do? I worked for her. Bwana nipe pesa, Bwana nipe pesa, Bwana nipe pesa, Bwana nipe pesa. I was a Ziwani prostitute for 12 good years. Vile wengine wanadhani kuwa desturi yao ni kulinda nchi yetu. Mimi, I came to believe that sex with men was the only reason I was born. I was very popular, especially with the home guards. They had the most money because of their corrupt practices. Lakini mimi, I preferred to assist those fighting for our country's freedom. I made it my job to satisfy their needs whenever they needed the assistance, so that they could concentrate on the fight for independence. In 1962, I met Tom Mboya. He was then a young leader for the mass movement and trade unions. No. Tom Mboya did not need my assistance, apparently. If anything, he barely spoke to me for more than 15 minutes. I was taken by him, and I resolved to change my life. When I told him, Tom Mboya suggested that I go back to school. Isitoshe, he promised to get me, Sifa, on the jets to England. In 1944, mimi, Sifa, Zaida, Hamadi, left my small village in Rabai on a goods train to Nairobi. 20 years later, mimi, Sifa, Zaida, Kero, Hamadi, left Nairobi on an aeroplane to London. Hey, jamani. Jamani. Kwani Mungu hawachi mcha wake? Mastaajabu huisha ukifa. Mimi Sifa, I was one of the only 4 girls to benefit from the government's foreign education in England that year. In England, I lived with Reverend and Mrs. Farlow. Wakanifundisha how to read and write, and also taught me historia. They also enrolled me at the Cambridge Women's College. Jamani. Today, I am back in Nairobi as the widowed wife of Josiah Farlow. And I am very proud to say that Mimi, Sifa, Zaida, Kero, Hamadi, Farlow, I am a proud and liberated and educated woman. Nani kama mimi? Nani kama mimi? Bwana usinipe pesa, siku hizi nina yangu.